Well, good afternoon. As we get started, I want the Speaker of the House to start.
At least for another month. This is my last press conference as Speaker, so you know what, and what a great opportunity to step up and talk about what a great position that I and we have put the state of Minnesota into. This forecast obviously represents, I think, the results of a lot of great work by Republicans on our budgets to really put the state on a sound footing and make sure that we're leaving this state in a better place than we're finding it. And our policies have done exactly that. We cut taxes over the course of the last 4 years, more than has been done in the last 20 years. And what do we see as a result of that? We see increased tax revenues. We see that Minnesota's economy is churning stronger and better than it has. And when Minnesotans do well, the state of Minnesota does well. And I think that's the most important message we can take away from this forecast. When Minnesotans do well, the state of Minnesota does well. As we move forward, we still have some big issues that we need to work on, and I will, from the minority now, continue to roll up my sleeves and work on those issues that Minnesotans care about. But I'm also going to be there as a constant reminder and hopefully a voice of common sense when we talk about certain issues. For instance, if the problem is healthcare costs are too high, the solution isn't raising healthcare costs. As it relates to this surplus, if we have one-time revenue or a one-time surplus, the answer to that isn't permanent spending. I think we have to continue to be fiscally prudent, continue to be responsible with the resources that taxpayers have given us, continue to invest back into taxpayers. And I think as a result of this surplus, I think we can stop talking about increasing taxes right now. This is a time when I think we need to be responsible with those resources that Minnesotans have given us, and frankly, the surplus we have is as a result of the prosperity that they have created out in our economy. I think we need to recognize that, appreciate that, and treat them with the respect that that deserves. And I think there are more opportunities for tax relief. We let senior citizens keep a great deal more of their income by raising the lower limit on the exemption of Social Security income for state income taxes. I'd like to finish that job. It's one of the things that I regret not completely having accomplished. We could only go part way, but as revenues continue to increase into the state, I hope that we can finish that and make sure that all of Minnesotans, senior citizens, Social Security income is not taxed at the state level. We're one of only 7 states that still does that. I think it's an opportunity for us. I want to continue to work on funding our road and bridge infrastructure. We showed that you can do that without raising new revenue. And when you have surpluses, I think now is the opportunity to take the money that Minnesotans have already given us and invest it into the infrastructure, the roads and bridge infrastructure that they care about. We got far more than halfway there on what the total need is without raising 1 penny of new taxes to do it, and I think we can do that now that we're seeing even more revenue coming in, so more surplus revenue. So I think we've got some great opportunities, but I will still be here and still be part of. I want to be part of the solutions. I'm going to roll up my sleeves, but I'm going to keep us focused on the problems that Minnesotans care about. I think this place can be far less partisan if we focus back on the problems that Minnesotans care about and then work on solutions, instead of coming to the table with solutions and already being kind of dug in on what those solutions need to be. Let's work together to find the solutions, the bipartisan solutions that Minnesotans care about, and solve the problems that are hurting them. So thank you.
Good afternoon. The Speaker had a lot of things that I would also agree with, but I do think the Republican-led budgets have brought us to this fiscal stability. Certainly, Governor Dayton wanted to spend quite a bit more than we spent, and had we done that, we would not have these surpluses that we have right now. In addition to the surpluses that we have, our reserves are now at the highest number they've ever been. And if you add in our cash reserves as well, it's near $2.5 billion, both funds combined. And so that's really good news. It gives us some breathing room. It certainly is a time that we should not be considering a gas tax. That'll be one of the things that this kind of a surplus says we certainly can live within the resources that we have. You know, I'm thinking about where the people are. We care about what the people have to pay, and if they have to pay more at the pump, you know, we don't want that to happen. And now that we have this kind of surplus, I think we can navigate around that. One of the things I want to talk about too is we were looking at the reports that MMB put out, and it shows roughly a revenue growth of 2.5%. They show that dropping down to 2.5%, but it's still new taxes, new revenue coming into Minnesota. But at the same time, they show that our spending increases at 2.9%. And so that's something that we're going to have a discussion about, making sure that the spending that we have aligns with the revenues that we have. And so, you know, where that's going to go exactly, I don't know. Other than I just want to highlight the fact that long-term, that trend cannot continue. So as we're looking forward, though, what are the things that we can do? You know, the speaker talked about transportation. It does show what Republicans have done the last 2 years. First of all, we dedicated half of the sales tax on auto parts. That generated about, if I'm correct, about $3 billion over 10 years. And then we increased significantly spending through the bonding bills. If you took that same pattern out 10 years, that's another $3 billion or so. So about $6 billion on the path we're on of new money going into transportation, roads, and bridges. And so that trend we want to continue. As far as new spending programs, we're going to have to look together. I certainly appreciate the conversations I've had with Representative Hortman and Governor-elect Walz as far as where do we want to go, how do we want to end up there. But this forecast today is really good news. It allows us both to have a little room to negotiate.
Senator, everybody's kind of assumed there was going to be some sort of a surplus. So what have your conversations been like with the governor-elect and Representative Hortman about the gas tax? They knew a surplus was likely coming, but they haven't really changed their tune on the need for that.
Well, I don't know that they thought the surplus was going to be this high. I did not. I thought it was going to be somewhere near $1 billion. It's 1.5. Roughly half of that is one-time money, and that's, you know, when you think about one-time money, what are the uses for it? That's where I'm saying that's the kind of money I like to put into roads and bridges projects that are also one-time money. If they continue to push for the gas tax, when we have this kind of a budget surplus, that's just not the direction we think is wise for Minnesota, not wise for the taxpayer.
Senator, you're talking about tax increases, of course, and trying to avoid those. Is there any talk about tax cuts and possibly giving money back?
So prior to today, when we thought it was around $1 billion, we were open to that, but we knew we had some major responsibilities that we have to take care of. At 1.5, that now is on the table. You had the speaker talk about, you know, should we finish Social Security? This is where the discussion is going to be. I think that would certainly be something we could consider. Another one that we talk about is a tax credit for child care. That's an issue that could be worked through this. Another one that I think is worth looking at is lowering all income tax brackets, not just the bottom two that we did in the last tax bill that the governor vetoed. And so point is, that's where the conversation is going to begin. There's going to be much more openness for that than there was prior to this forecast.
Would you like all the tax relief targeted, no Jesse checks, rebate checks?
I don't think anybody is talking about a Jesse check again. I think, you know, whether it's targeted, whether it's broad, that will be part of the discussion. You hear Senator Chamberlain talking about, you know, doing all tax brackets, you know, making sure everybody participates in it, but that'll be the conversation that begins anew after this report came out.
Is there enough ongoing money for ongoing tax cuts, or would it be smarter to do some one-time spending?
I think we should line up one-time spending with one-time decisions that we make, whether that's roads and bridges or whatever the issue is, not a Jesse check. And ongoing, you know, we have to look at what do we do with that. Another issue is the provider tax and where that's going to be. That's going to have a surplus through 2021, but if nothing changes with the federal government, there's going to be more troubled waters down the road. But again, now we have an opportunity to say where should that be paid for from?
What's the one-time spending? What would be an example?
The number one I already mentioned is roads and bridges. I think is a good place for it.
What's wrong with Jesse checks?
Where did that come from?
It's right here.
Sorry. Oh, hey, my man.
Ventriloquist.
So, nothing. It's just that, you know, I think there's better ways to do it. I think the general consensus was before, did we get the right bang for the buck for that?
You have to call Kenny,
That might be. What about education? Do you think that there's room to give more for this money? There's enough here to increase education spending, which we expect.
Certainly, virtually every budget cycle, education ends up getting more money. If I look back from 2005, when Republicans controlled the House, or the last few years, there's always been significant funding increase. The one thing I'm asking for in addition to that is innovation. We should not be afraid to take a look at different ways that we can use our resources better, or different ways to find out how do we solve inner-city problems. And when we talk about innovation, that means I want to listen to what the teachers have to say, I want to listen to the school administrators, parents, and students, but the student has to be first in the decisions we make.
And what about provider tax?
So right now, we know, at least the report today, the provider tax has a surplus through 2021. What we don't know is what the federal government will do beyond that. And if things stay exactly the same, then it's into deficits beyond that time. And the provider tax has a lot of things that are covered in that, in addition to just the Minnesota Care. And so one of the things we've been discussing is, do we want to take some of the things that are covered in there and just put them into the budgets that they belong in anyway? But that's where we're going to have a lot of fun conversations.
And this might be a better question for House. What are people telling you about the economy? I know, Speaker, you've probably been around the state a little bit the last few months.
You know, I think people are happy with the economy. I think, you know, people are seeing Minnesotans are seeing the benefit of a growing economy, and you know, we're basically at full employment. Folks, you know, any Minnesotan that wants a job can get one. Which is a great position to be in. We're seeing, you know, the reason we have a surplus is because Minnesotans are doing well. That's good news. So you know, we do feel like folks are happy with the economy, they're happy with the economic growth, but we also know if we start increasing taxes on Minnesotans at a time when we don't need to because we have a surplus, that's going to hurt Minnesotans, and it will ultimately hurt our revenue stream to the state of Minnesota. Our revenue stream, as everyone knows, is very dependent on a good economy. We collect our revenue from income tax and sales tax, so we have to be very cautious and mindful of not doing things to hurt our state's economy, which would then hurt our revenue stream. So we're on a good course right now, but we have to be careful about how we proceed in the future.
The report almost blames retired baby boomers for some of the problem, because a lot of us are out of the job market. There aren't enough people to fill the jobs. Is there something that can be done for that?
Well, I think, you know, as many of us have talked about, I think we're not doing a good job right now of lining up the incoming workforce with the jobs that are there, and we need to expose our kids at a younger age to some of the trades and different things that, you know, put them in VOTEC programs where they can actually make more money than they can with a four-year degree in a lot of cases. So, but I think we're not exposing kids to that, and therefore not piquing their interest and getting them into a track that would get them into some of those jobs that are available.
To that
But I
point-
also blame you, Don, if you want to. I also blame you. I was going to say you don't look retired to me, but.
Just behind Davis' chest.
Mr. Speaker, to that point on the economy, this is the November, December forecast. There'll be another one in February. Historically, these things have fluctuated. What sense do you have, what tea leaves do you have that we won't be looking at a vastly different number once session is underway? You
know, I think historically, at least in recent history, I think if you look at the November forecasts, we would find these to be a little more pessimistic maybe. The February forecast, there's less time between the two. You've got the holiday shopping and you know, because we're a lot dependent on sales tax revenues, sometimes those things can have a big impact. Typically, we see that February forecast being a little more optimistic. You know, if you look at this particular forecast and where we are in the next biennium at $1.5 billion of surplus revenue, 450 of that, unless I'm wrong, 450 of that was predicted in the February forecast. 700 of it will carry over from this biennium into the next. And then, the remaining of that is what we actually have in revenue growth. Now, my personal opinion is I think the economic growth that they're predicting is pessimistic. This won't be the first time you've heard me say that about, but you know what, that's their job, and I would rather they err on the side of caution than get it wrong and we're spending too much money. So I'm certainly happy with that, but I predict that we will see a much larger surplus even come February than we do now. And not that we can plan for that, but I also want to remind folks the decisions we make during the next legislative session will happen after having the knowledge of what's in the February forecast. So it's premature to talk about raising a gas tax or this or that. We know what the problem is, and the good news for Minnesotans is we agree that road and bridges, our roads and bridge infrastructure needs more funding, right? We've solved more than half of the problem in the last biennium, but there's a ways to go. I think it's good news that both sides agree on the fact that that's one of the problems we need to tackle. I think it's great that both sides agree on the fact that we need to lower healthcare costs in Minnesota. I hope that they remember that the solution to lowering healthcare costs isn't to raise healthcare costs. Spoiler alert, you're going to hear that more out of me this session as people bring bills to the floor that do the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. But we need to focus on those problems. There are a lot of Minnesotans hurt by really high insurance premiums and deductibles that they just simply can't afford. I had a woman literally look me in the eye and say, she told me what they were going to have to pay for health insurance, and with tears in her eyes told me that they had to drop their health insurance. And that's as a result of Obamacare. So no one can think that we've solved this problem. It's almost gotten worse. The people who have $3,000 a month deductibles, $3,000 a month premiums with a $13,000 deductible do not have health insurance. This is something that we need to solve, and it's not a partisan issue, and it's not a partisan solution. It's something we all need to roll up our sleeves and work on together, and I absolutely intend to do that. And I'm not even in the Senate, and I like to filibuster, apparently.
So one quick response about tax conformity too, because nobody's asked about that. It is something we want to get done as soon as possible. I realize that it can be more complicated, and some of the benefits of doing it last year have gone. But we will still work on a tax conformity bill that does not raise revenue from the taxpayer. And so that was some of the struggle. So this surplus, again, makes that easier to try to accomplish as well.
Can I chime in? I want to chime in on that one too. From the House's perspective, this is a big deal. This federal tax conformity, we had hoped to pass a bill last year. We passed together a great bill that didn't raise revenue on Minnesotans, and it took a little money to make that happen. We put it on the governor's desk. We feel it was a non-controversial bill, but because it wasn't included in other things, the governor vetoed that. I think Minnesotans were hurt by that. You have my commitment in the House that we will work with the new majority in the House to get that bill passed. I think it needs to pass in January. We need to give Minnesotans the certainty of getting that federal tax conformity bill passed. It's an absolute necessity, and it needs to be the first thing out of the chute.
So just before Knoblach comes, it's 150 to 250 million, depending on what we want to do there.
To your earlier comment, I just wanted to say that normally the shift in the forecast is greatest between February and now, because you've had so many months go by. There's normally not that much in 3 months between now and February, although there will be some. But I want to reminisce a little bit quickly for those of you who have been here a long time, because I feel like I might be potentially seeing the same movie again. A lot of you know that I was Ways and Means Chair back in the 2000s. As a matter of fact, when I decided to retire in 2006, my last Ways and Means meeting was about the November forecast in 2006, and we had a $2 billion surplus projected for the coming biennium in 2006 for 2008, 2009. And I just, I hear a lot of spending plans coming out of the incoming Democratic House majority. And back then we had an incoming Democratic House majority too. And spending from the 2006 November forecast to the 2007 November forecast went up $2.2 billion. And by 2007, 1 year later, we actually had a small deficit. Just 1 year later, going from $2 billion in surplus to a slight deficit. 2 years later, we had almost a $5 billion deficit. And now most of that was because of the economy deteriorating, but some of it was because spending did go up substantially. And so while I think that there's a lot to be said that the economy is going along well, you know, there are a few warning signs out there, and I think we need to be cautious, particularly when, you know, there isn't a lot of big increased ongoing spending numbers in this forecast. It's going to be hard to put a whole lot of new money into education that's got ongoing spending or anything else, given the budget that we've got. And so I will explore this a little bit more in the Ways and Means meeting on Tuesday, but I wanted to reminisce because I do think about that as I get ready to retire from this place again.
What's your understanding of the amount of one-time versus recurring revenues in this?
Well, in 22-23, the structural balance is like 456 million. So it's, you know, there's not a lot of difference between the incoming revenues or the projected outgoing expenditures down the road.
Does that surprise you?
Not given the projections they have where they're saying GDP growth is only going to be 1.5% when you get out there. You know, if it's low like that, you're not going to have as many tax revenues if those forecasts are true. Now, we heard a lot of gloom and doom, you know, a year ago about how things were falling apart, and we've had steady, strong growth and steady, strong tax revenues since, I think partly because of the tax bill that passed in Washington, D.C., and I think if we do something on tax conformity, that'll help us here too. But nevertheless, you know, I think back to the last time I left and saw a $2 billion surplus, which is essentially what we have here if you add in the reserves, and things can change quickly.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks.